Hello and welcome. You're on Strat News Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale. And as usual, you are on the evening program that we conduct on between Mondays and Wednesdays, The Gist, which is our program for current affairs for the first 3 days of the week. And today we are going to discuss the situation in Myanmar. So it is The Gist on Wednesday evening. So it's been more than 80 days that the military in Myanmar conducted a bloodless coup, which ousted the democratically elected government or prevented a newly elected government from coming in, where the country has been now plunged into some kind of a turmoil. Remember, 700 and more people have been killed, and yet the military has been unable to stop the protests that have broken out all over the country. Interestingly, the ethnic insurgencies in Myanmar, which mostly are on the periphery of the country, either in the east or the west of Myanmar, have also joined in the protest in various ways. In fact, the military junta is actually battling the insurgencies after a relative period of peace. And that has resulted in total turmoil across the country. Also, Myanmar has not been able to get any international support, predictably so. Although India has been very cautious in its reaction to what is happening inside Myanmar for obvious reasons, because India-Myanmar relations are far more strategic to both the countries than any other country in the region, except perhaps China. And this week, of course, the head of the military, General Min Aung Hlaing, is scheduled to attend some ASEAN summit towards the weekend, which is again a surprise. But some observers say not a surprise, because ASEAN is also known to have a posture which says that they will not interfere in any member country's internal affairs. So, in keeping with that, they haven't really taken up any resolution or anything condemning the coup in Myanmar, except for 2 or 3 countries. We'll see what happens over that weekend. But to discuss the current situation in Myanmar and where is it headed, I'm joined by a distinguished guest from New York, ethnic Myanmaris, but someone who's grown up in America. Kim Myung Ong, she's with the Asia Center, Bangkok, but is based in New York, and she's going to take us through what she thinks is happening inside Myanmar and what looks to be the near future of that country. Welcome to this program, and thank you for joining at an odd hour. Really, it's early morning in New York, but we are honored that you sort of took up our invitation and have joined us. So let me ask you the first question: where do you see Myanmar currently?
Thank you, Nitin, first of all, for having me. I think it's at a very precarious point. After the coup in February, it wasn't clear at that point whether this was something that was going to be resolved quickly or take a longer period of time, and it's turning out to be a longer struggle. I think that we'll get more into this, but I am hopeful that at the other end of this, whenever this is resolved at the end of the struggle, that the National Unity Government, which was recently formed and consists of rightful elected parliamentarians, mostly from Aung San Suu Kyi's party, the National League for Democracy, as well as ethnic minorities and some of the leaders of the civil disobedience movement and protest movement. I'm hopeful that they will eventually be able to prevail with the right international pressure and without too much more bloodshed to finally realize a vision of an inclusive federal government for the country, which was, frankly, that was the vision at independence and has eroded over time, particularly during the first era of military rule after the first junta in 1965. We had been hopeful about the transition over the last decade to a semi-democracy. There have been some concerns with civil rights abuses and genocide and war crimes against the Rohingya in particular, which has been in the news. But the fact that it was moving toward democracy had been hopeful. I think now this is a very unfortunate turn of events, but I'm hopeful that we will be able to kind of wipe the slate clean at the end of this struggle and move forward with that more inclusive country.
The country is no stranger to military coups and the military trying to take control, not allowing democracy to flourish. That is a given if you look at the past 40 or 45 years of Myanmar's history. But what is it that is different from the earlier protests or earlier agitations that used to take place in Myanmar when the military junta tried to stifle democracy, or at least didn't allow democratic norms and means to flourish in that country?
This is a great point in question. The military, when I was born in the early 70s, the military had already been in power for some time, and in the years that followed, I think that both among Burmese outside the country, like my family, and people within the country, the vast majority of people really did not support the military. But I think as a result both of suppression of information, the lack of freedom of information, freedom of the press inside the country, as well as the lack of clear information outside of the country about what's going on due to the country's isolationist stance, I think that the kind of solidarity against the military government kind of papered over some of the real differences and needs within the country. Like, for instance, I always knew that there were some ethnic armed resistance within the country, but growing up, I wasn't aware of just how serious it was, and that armed ethnic militia controlled large swaths of territory, and that there actually has been an ongoing civil war for quite some time, that the central government has never controlled these areas. But I think now what's different is that the country has become more open in the last decade or so, both in terms of connection to the internet and information from the outside, which is why one of the strategies they're using is to shut down the internet, shut down targeted sites, and now also a kind of a brutal crackdown on journalists and news institutions itself, both targeted and as an institution more generally. But I think there's just more awareness of the fact, both inside and outside of the country, of these issues. The Rohingya crisis certainly cracked open the like nationalist nature of the national identity, and how it's focused very much on Buddhism, how it's focused very much on the Bama majority's identity. And I think that this is a moment where the opposition can really kind of look at these differences and think about how to create a national identity that truly is more inclusive, and also a government ultimately at the end of this struggle that is more inclusive. I think that there's just more awareness of what's going on because more information has been available, but also just even among friends and family who aren't necessarily political, I'm seeing for the first time, I think, an openness to really examining that national identity and how it may be inflexible, and thinking about how we might be able to both form an identity and a government that is more inclusive for the country.
But that brings me to the question which we have posed at the beginning of the program. Is civil war inevitable in Myanmar, given the fact that the military doesn't seem to be in any mood to relent or is not showing any signs of any weakness. In fact, their grip on the country seems to be far more tighter than it has ever been. So, in that sense, what does the near future hold really, Kin?
I hope that civil war isn't inevitable because it would be just very, very bad for everybody in the country. Um, I think we are progressing as far as the struggle, as kind of both sides are hunkering down and not giving up. I think that it's civil war. The country has always been in some level of civil war. It just wasn't
In the
necessarily
periphery,
known.
in the periphery, really, but it
In the
is
periphery,
now,
yes.
yeah, it's now
Yeah,
more into the cities and urban
that's
centers.
right. That's right. And I think that what would lead to an all-out civil war would be for the armed militia, which is all have always vied for control in their peripheral regions, and fairly large peripheral regions, to actually try to seek to gain some kind of control over central Myanmar, with the area that the military does control. And I could see that being a rational decision in that I think that I'm not in support of violence in any way, but I think that the armed militia, they have some principles that they're fighting for, and they are seeing and they're aware of the protest movement and the violence that's happening, how the military is shooting to kill immediately at unarmed protesters. And so I think that that would certainly be the next level in the conflict. But I'm hopeful again about the formation of the national unity government, and which includes representatives of many of the ethnic groups, as well as the civil disobedience movement and the electeds. And I think that the path to avoid an all-out conflict would be, in addition to things like targeted sanctions against the military and military-owned enterprises, which I think is a powerful tool and more targeted than the broader sanctions we had before, and pressuring companies that invest in the country, like Chevron, for instance, to try to exert pressure, pressuring countries that have a lot of investment in the country, Singapore, Japan, to kind of step up their role. I know India, also has a big stake in the country, and there's a lot that can be done there as well. I think recognizing the national unity government, and putting kind of business and economic pressure on the military could help, as well as diplomatic pressure. I'm curious what's going to happen at the ASEAN meeting this weekend. But Myanmar is going to be there and represented by General Min Aung Hlaing, which is going to be an awkward situation, and I'm curious what he's going to have to say, for himself and for the country. But notwithstanding that ASEAN has not been, very assertive in this, I think there's still time for ASEAN to play a more assertive role.
Yeah, let's see what happens over this weekend. Like you mentioned, ASEAN is not known for interference, or at least taking any very definite stand against any internal situation in any of the member countries. But there has been some exceptions. Three countries have spoken against the coup and have also expressed their concern. So maybe there will be a lot of pressure on the military leader when he goes for the ASEAN summit, certainly. But in this, inevitably, one more question that arises when it comes to Burma or Myanmar is the presence or the influence of the Chinese in backing the military junta. It suits them apparently to have the military to rule Myanmar. And in that context, sitting in the United States, how do you see the Chinese role in the coup itself, and supporting the current dispensation, as it were?
Well, China, as you know, has been, really seeking to solidify its status as a regional kind of superpower, slowly over some time. And Even though China also itself has opened up, it's still a very brutal place. As we could see what's happening with the Uyghur Muslims in the West, and just its general position on dissent and freedom of speech. So China the support of China is crucial for Myanmar, and I think that they will continue to try to block any kind of United Nations actions on it. So I think that China's interest in Myanmar is both relating to its economic interests in the country, as well as just its general position as a regional power.
Yes,
India,
in fact,
sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's an opportunity for India, even though I think it has its own struggles with nationalism. I think that it is a more open place, and I think this is an opportunity for India to be a counterbalance.
In fact, that is one of the dilemmas that New Delhi faces, India faces, because for some time, for almost a month, India did not say much about what happened in Myanmar. They said that they should abide by the democratic credentials and also the verdict that was there in the elections. But of late, India has tweaked its stance a little bit. It has been critical along with other countries about what's happened there and how people are losing their lives in these protests. But like you said, the counterbalance has to be there. But India has to also look at its own national interest and also its inevitable competition with China vis-a-vis Myanmar. And therefore, I would, not really hazard a guess which way it will go. But what would you think are the expectations from India, apart from being the biggest democracy in the world? What do you think India can do to bring some change in the outlook of the military rulers right now?
I mean, I understand that India has quite a bit of trade with the country, and I think that applying some form of targeted sanctions,
security considerations, considerations. And strategic considerations.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, certainly you have to consider your economic interests. I think certainly targeted, sanctions against the military and military enterprises could be done. I think even if it's not at the point where it can fully recognize the national unity government, to work with and negotiate with and have a relationship with them and an open line of communication, I think can be helpful. And just continuing to exert pressure and exert its presence, I think, as a counterbalance to China, and going kind of as far as it's feasible to condemn what's going on. And in particular, just because it's not going to be resolved, more people are being killed. And it's interesting, the nature of the violence there. It's different from like in '88 when there was just a massive, crackdown kind of all at once. This has been kind of like a slow burn, but the CDM movement and the protesters are not showing any sign of backing down. So I think that as a democratic country, India also has to consider the security implications to itself of if Myanmar should break down into an all-out civil war, and to think about what's the way to avoid that, because I do think that it is going to erode more. I hope very much that it's not going to be an all-out civil war, but it will just keep eroding more if the military is kind of allowed to continue to do what they're doing unchecked.
True. And I think that is the final word from you, which gives us a kind of a path ahead as far as India is concerned. But certainly the situation inside Myanmar is right now worrying. And we'll have to wait and watch what happens at the ASEAN summit, and whether the military rulers are in any mood to compromise or have discussions, negotiations with the protesters. But as of now, it looks like Myanmar is in for a prolonged turmoil, if not civil war, as you have mentioned. But thanks very much for joining. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, and we hope to come back to you whenever need arises or whenever situation demands that we get your insight. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And viewers, please don't go away. Do keep watching Strat News Global, and of course, the gist from Monday to Wednesday. And keep sending us feedback. Of course, you know our social media handles. You also know where to give feedback. Our YouTube channel. Keep subscribing to the YouTube channel, and of course, keep watching Strat News Global as we bring in more discussions and more updates on situation in South Asia and beyond. Until the next time, it's goodbye.